second day of the IoT and Edge and the Far Edge Computing Workshop. We're very happy to welcome everyone for hopefully yet another great day of discussion. It's the big shoes to step in. Yesterday there were lots of topics and very interesting chats and the presentations that took place, focused on the plethora of edges of the far edge as well. So we've discussed interoperability, open source, participation, focus, commitments. And in the second day, we have specific focus, but yet we will continue discussion from yesterday. So we will focus on the key industrial sectors, on the drivers behind, on the commitments, on the interest in participation, interest in collaboration, and the overall benefits of such alliances and the collaborations. To get there faster, to get there more efficient, and to get there with differentiation and the economic benefit during these difficult times as well. So that doesn't make our job easier. So we need to sharpen up and address the topics. So good morning once again, everyone. My name is Natalie Samovic. I'm a member of the steering board of European Alliance of IoT Innovation, and I will moderate this session today. Given the experience of yesterday, it was lots of discussions. We went a bit over time, so apologies if I will try to keep the schedule on time, yet allowing for the discussions. So we start, just a moment. So we start now, go till 12:30. So just a couple housekeeping rules. So the session is going to be recorded today and then will be made available. If you can all mute yourselves because we're on Zoom, except the speakers. Please also switch your video off if you're not a speaker. The speakers, you're invited to switch the video on, and also during the panel discussions and Q&A sessions. We are welcome the chat questions share. Please share your questions, but not only questions. Yesterday we had very fruitful discussions also on chat, so you're welcome to do it today. So you also have an option to raising your hand if you want to make a statement during Q&A session. And if there are any technical issues, please use info@NGIoT.eu, who is the organizer of the event. And thanks for the organization. Okay. And now it's not advancing. So going forward, without any further ado, I would like to give floor to the first panel of setting the scene. We're going to have two panels of setting the scene and then two panels of discussions today. So the first part will run from 9:30 till 9:45. So we have a very short period of time with very important and interesting views. I would like to start with inviting Martin Brinskov, who's actually behind the organization of NGIoT from Aarhus University and a lot of other organizations where he contributes his brain power to. Martin, please share your views with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie, and thanks for being with us here today to moderate. It's a great honor and pleasure to be again. So yesterday we had the more longer term perspective. So what are we seeing into the far edge? So I think coming into this day two, we know pretty much the landscape. I think there were, although there were many views, I think also a quite good consensus on the decentralization that's happening to reap the benefits of technologies. So we need to understand, what does that mean when we do computing on the edge? So it's a great pleasure also to have you here, Gail, together with the Eclipse Foundation. Very large focus on mobilizing also the European ecosystem, industry, public sector, research, and the civil society collaboration. So thanks for being with us today, and also you, Natalie, representing the Alliance for IoT Innovation. I think it's really today about mobilization, so more like short to midterm, what can we do with the instruments that are coming up? And Rolf, I'm sure you will share with us a few thoughts on what is actually coming now, what can we do? Not to, let's say, build consortia here, no, but to understand how can we actually work together. We heard a lot yesterday about value networks, about ecosystems. Well, they don't just disappear out of thin air. It's hard work. So that's what we're doing today. So thank you everyone for joining, and I'm looking very much forward.
Thank you so much, Martin, for setting the scene. So I would like to invite Gail Blondell to share his opinion with Eclipse Foundation as to of what would make the best and what is the scene of today. Thank you.
Thanks. So, well, can you stop sharing so I can share a few slides? Thank you. Yes. Okay, so yes. So, well, good morning, and thanks for inviting me in this to set the scene with you. I'm really honored to be with you today. I was attending the webinar yesterday, and it was very interesting to see several well-known friends of Eclipse IoT and Edge native communities like Paolo Azzoni or Angelo Corsaro. And today, I would like maybe to give you this perspective of what has happened with Eclipse in the last 19 years. And I want to focus on three points. First, some of you identify the Eclipse Foundation with the Eclipse development tools, and that's how it began a long time ago now. But since 2010, the Eclipse Foundation is a general purpose open source foundation. There are not so many of them. There are the most known are the Linux Foundation, the Apache Software Foundation, and the Eclipse Foundation. And you were talking about building ecosystems, and that's really the role of such kind of organizations to help open source projects manage their intellectual property and develop their ecosystem. Just an anecdote that we have projects in lots of different languages. So Java, C, C++, Go, Rust, everything. And in many domains like automotive, cloud, IoT, artificial intelligence, smart cities. My second point is that since 2012, we introduced Eclipse working groups. That's our way to structure the special interest groups. And the first one was the Eclipse IoT working group. I come back to that in a minute. And finally, in last May, we announced that we moved the Eclipse Foundation to Europe. As you can see here, it was created in 2004 in the US, but we are now incorporating as an AISBL, an international nonprofit association in Belgium. And of course, moving to Europe is, we were a global organization and we want to stay a global organization, but based in Europe. And our goal is really to be the open source foundation of choice for Europe, operating under EU-based laws and regulation using Euro, and we have also the capability to host code in Europe. So that's just an update that was necessary because not everybody here was aware of that. Now about open source, I would like to remind everybody that this is first of all a flavor of intellectual property management. I mean that by publishing open source software, companies publish some of their intellectual property under a well-known license. And there is more than that. Particularly open source is particularly adapted to platforms, especially when you need vendor-neutral governance, when you need well-defined collaboration processes. And so different stakeholders from different organizations can collaborate together. Of course, you need a collaboration infrastructure, and some actors like GitHub provide a great collaboration infrastructure. But I think that too many companies and too many organizations identify GitHub with open source. I want to say that there is more than that. One more thing about open source is that not everything has to be open source. We think that open source works very well to collaborate on platforms, but companies should be able to create their products on top of those open source projects. Just 2 minutes about Eclipse IoT. That's a large community with 45 projects, nearly 50 members. So that's 45 real open source projects. And as you can see here, we have members from all sizes and all different types, from startups to multinationals. And you can see also that we have many European organizations, including, you can see here that the strategic members of Eclipse IoT are Bosch, Eurotech, and Red Hat. So that's 2/3 are European organizations, and you see CEA, Calypso, EdiLink, and many more. And about what we will discuss today, the Eclipse IoT projects cover all the different aspects of IoT, and there are already lots of projects on the device. And one thing that is important is that it's okay to have competing projects, and it's okay to have, and most of the time competing open source projects transform in being complementary open source projects. Like FOG05 and IOFOG are our 2 flagship projects on the edge computing, for example, for the moment. And we find a very good articulation between the 2 projects. So that's my message, is that we need more projects in this picture, and each of those projects is an opportunity to collaborate. And finally, personally, I think that this is the right thing, the right time for strategic open source. I mean, some companies, today we are more in this mindset of open source for innovation, but lots of companies have used open source to cut costs or to hire talents, including your companies, certainly. But it's now the right time to become more strategic with open source. New platforms appear in open source because this is the best way to ensure adoption. And there is a huge opportunity in using open source to set up open collaborations and open innovation. And so, yeah, that would be my conclusion for this morning.
Thank you so much, Gael. So you showed us the way to the open source for the costs for the efficiency reduction or increase of the efficiency.
Yep.
That's always resonates with the audiences on many levels. So thank you so much. Without further ado, I would like to give a word to the third panelists in the first session. We will come back with the questions later on. Thank you. To Rolf Riemenschneider with the European Commission, DG Connect. Rolf, if you can please share your views with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. I start sharing my screen. It should come now.
Yeah, we see the presentation, but not in presentation mode yet.
Should
yes.
be there now. Okay. Good. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. A warm welcome also from my private place, in my private home, as most of you are as well. Thanks for organizing the workshop. I think the day today builds on the day of yesterday, which was, as said, quite a rich content together with Artemis. My name is Rolf Riemenschneider. I'm head of sector for Internet of Things. Yesterday we had Max Lemke as the head of unit of Internet of Things. So Internet of Things is sort of quite still a strategic objective inside Commission agenda. We heard yesterday a lot about electronic control systems, systems of systems, and Internet of Things as building blocks. Putting technology together, designing systems is one of the strengths of European industry. But I think systems today do not go without a data strategy, and a data strategy in cloud is high on the Commission agenda. The data strategy has been published in February. Last week, there was publication of the data governance regulation. So a lot of things happening there. And today, you cannot deploy Internet of Things without a cloud strategy. I think Internet of Things is an enabler, but it's not the only one. I think we talk about electronic control systems and building systems, one of the European strengths. And there's a lot of potential. Growth rates, economic potential in different sectors, from the automotive sectors, the industry and robotics, aerospace, telecom, healthcare, and so on and so forth. The right side, all sectors where European has leadership. Growth is led by IoT, as we heard yesterday, and leadership, if you want to keep it, you have to be control of the whole value chain or value networks, as we heard it yesterday. Besides IoT, edge computing might be the decisive factor to spur innovation in future systems. And Europe has to put on the race, and to compete globally and to be a forerunner in that domain. That's why we have the workshop. If you look at the situation of today, it's not as rosy. More than 70% of IoT revenues are cloud-centric. And if you look at the radar on the right side, you see that cloud is already dominated in sectors like mobile phones, wearables, consumer IT. It's quite less pertinent in sectors like electronic control systems, almost not existent, in manufacturing and buildings very low, and farming very low, energy low. So we have very low adoption rate in key industrial sectors, which might be a risk for competition in the future. So how to change that game? We heard yesterday that cloud might be the new competitive factor. IoT services without cloud services today, you're losing on innovation, you're losing on competitiveness. In 5 years from now, Edge will be the glue basically between the IoT devices, the systems, and the cloud infrastructure. So basically, it's an opportunity for Europe to gain leadership in the data economy, which is not existent in the cloud space. So from that point of view, we want to know today from you what already is happening from the industrial perspective in edge and edge computing, what sort of value networks can be built. But we also want to understand, what's the taxonomy for the edge, the different notions of edge computing. I think with the advent of Industry 4.0, everybody understood we need to bridge IT and OT systems. Now with the edge, it's getting a bit more complex. We still have the operational devices, the sensors and control systems. We have the operational edge, which we call the far edge or the deep edge. But we also have the view of the telecoms introduced by new telecom infrastructure company, corporate 5G networks, campus networks, mobile edge computing, and you still have sort of more investment into public-private clouds at the IT level. So also we have to be clear, we try to learn, what sort of different notions of edge computing will occur and how to see that. I think what's clear for European sovereignty and competitiveness is, you cannot act in fragmented manner. If you look at the example of automotive, every connected car today is connected to a cloud, most likely the cloud of the vendor, the manufacturer of the car. But for full autonomous mode, for connected automated driving, you know, a car needs to have the full picture. It cannot be connected to only one cloud. It needs the full information across a federated infrastructure of data services and cloud services. So we cannot work in islands in order to drive innovation, in order to have the full support for autonomous vehicles. And on the other side, on the right side, you see the container ship. Massive investments from today's cloud operators and hyperscalers into AI services, into cloud services, and that is heavily also penetrating, extending their services massively also to the edge. The power at the edge is European strength of today, but I think the risk for connected objects and IoT devices of commoditization through cloud services is quite high. So how to compete? I think it was said yesterday, if Europe wants to compete, you know, you have to bring the islands together, what you see in the middle. You have to join forces at European scale. And the big question is, who acts first? Which is the industry to work to make the first step and how to join the forces? And that's my last slide. You know, what sort of is the big question for today? I think it was mentioned by Gail. A platform approach to open source is one way to sort of form a value network. On European scale, on the European Commission, we need a coherent approach across the existing European partnerships, call it 5G, call it embedded systems, Artemis, or whatever. We want to know from industry, you know, which of the industrial players in Europe are ready to take a leading role, to drive convergence, to provide the clue between the automation control systems and cloud, and how to engage in multi-vendor partnerships. Or do we need new partnerships? I think open innovation is key. I think it was mentioned by Gail. We want to know also, you know, how to bring on board at a very early stage SMEs and startups in order to foster innovation and fast-track innovation, and how to design an open edge computing architecture. What are the key elements? Open standards, open interfaces, open source, or what are the industrial alliances which are engaging in that sector? And that's all from my side of today. I think that was the burning questions, what we learned today, where we have to follow up afterwards. And you see some links from the previous workshop, from the Alliance IoTI, from Gaia X initiative, as a Franco-German initiative at the moment in cloud, but also cloud edge, a recent Artemis white paper, and the European data strategy. So we wish you a very fruitful discussion. We will carefully listen to your views of today, and we try to do conclusions and follow up afterwards together with the CSA NGIoT, where you also find the report of last workshops on the webpage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rolf, for keeping our perspective on the sovereignty competitiveness topics, also giving the setting for the need for the federated infrastructures and the reasons behind. And the island, of course, is very, very illustrative on setting the scene. Thank you so much. So this concludes our first setting the scene panel. Rolf will also stay during the day, right? So we will continue.
Yes, of course.
Question and answer. So that's not the last intervention. So without further ado, I think we're running a little bit late. So I would like to jump into the second panel of setting the scene and hear the view from the community. And we have two speakers at this panel, Boris Maurer and Paulo Calçada. So I would like to start with Boris Maurer, who represents Accenture TM Forum. Boris, if you can share your presentation, very welcome. And let's get to it.
Thank you very much. Let me quickly share my screen. go into presentation. What I'm going to talk about is a little bit coming from a discussion, Martin, that we had in Theorem Forum about 5G and the revolution it brings. Let me get this off. So effectively, we had a discussion about what is actually 5G bringing to this, and many people actually think that 5G is just the next generation of networks after 4G, and the discussion that we had is it's fundamentally changing actually everything that how we think about networks. When we think about networks in the past, it was in silos, it was Nokia, Ericsson, Huawei bringing that to us, and as we are now moving to 5G, the paradigm completely changes. So everything actually will be built in software. And this breaks up new ecosystems. So it's no longer the integrated silos that will rule, but it's basically built on open cloud infrastructure with the hyperscalers. And then on top of that, everything else is in the whole chain will be built into software. It will be public and virtual. It will be a cloud-based ecosystem. It will be platform-based, and it's basically pervasive across all industries. The interesting thing for that, and probably in this context where we're discussing today, is effectively that with 5G, the cloud goes to the edge, and the center and the key control point of the cloud becomes the edge, which of course changes also the way we need to think about how actually we use data at the edge or in the cloud, and have completely new capabilities and also possibilities to manage data in a different way. We have the ability to compute at the edge and not basically in a center, and do much more online analytics, have real-time processing, organized for security and for data integrity in a different way, and allow to actually create a lot of new applications that we couldn't do before. Also moving from an infrastructure where we have a few big data centers globally into tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of data centers, which are then much closer to the applications that we actually want to run. Investments into that are ongoing. It's a big problem for the telcos because they are front loading the investments into those areas. Here you see the global cloud and 5G investments that will go into this, which we expect to peak in 2025. On the other side, if we think about how industry invests into that and into applications, you see on the right-hand side the cloud investments, but then the specific edge and 5G in related investments of industry. You see that they are still very small, but will explode and grow a lot over the next year. So it's a little bit a time difference between the infrastructure that need to be put in place and then the application investments that we foresee going from different industries into that. A key problem, and this is what I wanted to raise for the discussion today, is, and I'm just taking the example of the future home as the example to discuss here, is how do we bring the ecosystem together? I heard it before, Rolf, you said bringing the islands together. We see 4 areas for that. So we have a lot of hardware, but it's not interoperable. We have actually still, in this example, but very much if we can go to other verticals, we have app-enabled devices like we did for the last 10 years. And we need to bring that together and create interoperability. The second problem that we're having is around data, proliferation and protection of data. So who is going to take care for my data privacy? Who is going to manage my data? Where is user data transparent? How is data security there? How can I have trust into what is happening with my data, and how can I actually control my data? The third thing that we're seeing is around service orchestration. So there is a lot of service providers that are there, but how do we connect them? And how do we orchestrate so many services that will be available? We are used to that on our smartphone. When we are in the normal internet, we have our app store, and there everything is available. Will there be an app store on the edge? How will it be run, and what is the operating system that it will be embedded into? And finally, it's something where, and we have seen the chart before around where cloud is pervasive and where it's still not. There is a lot of insecurity about the technology. So we need to have somebody who basically sheds away the complexities of technology and make it usable for the people that actually want to benefit from those application areas. So there is a lot of question around that. And I hope that out of your discussions, you will bring those 4 areas together in the interest of the end user, be it on the B2C or B2B or B2B2X side. Let me close with one final chart. We have been thinking about that, how actually a system would work and an infrastructure or platform would work that would bring that all together. And we think that data is at the heart of all of that. And probably, and we would hope for, that your European ambitions actually lead to something which is not competitive, so that we get true interoperability across silos. But in order to basically make that, we need to have an open platform approach where actually we can all make sure that that metadata is stored. It's semantically available and searchable, so that we actually all also understand which kind of data we are sharing. And then basically we have marketplaces around it, and all of that wrapped into security around that. So I'm very much interested in the purple thing in the middle and see how Europe will move ahead to make that work, and are very interested into how our discussions here move forward to bring that to life. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Boris, for your insights and bringing the topics of the future home and the 4 challenges around that, and the purple core, as it will be remembered from the slide, where the challenges lie, and some answers to the questions. I believe we will get back to this discussion a bit later. Thank you so much for the presentation and sharing the challenges with us. I would like to invite Paolo Calzada with Porto Digital to share his presentation and further views on the community. Paolo, would you like to share your presentation?
I'm afraid I don't see Paolo. Maybe he dropped off.
Okay.
Let's maybe move to the next.
Okay. So then it saves us a little bit of time. Yay, we're probably going to have the discussion today. I see some exchanges already with the links to some of the initiatives shared in the chat. So please check it once in a while so that you can use some of the resources. So then I would like to move to the, let me share the screen or just the invite to the, yes, I will share the screen. Here it is. So let's move then to the next panel discussion, which is centered on the far edge applications and specifically on the investment priorities and partnerships mobilization. So here, as you see, we went through some of the challenges, some of the potential architecture options, and the disruption in the new connectivity coming up. So now the focus a bit more on the investment priorities and the partnership mobilization. So we have 3 speakers and contributors to the panel today. Susanna Alcade with Siemens. I see you, Susanna, already on, so I will let you share the presentation in a moment. Albert Sovers with Atos, and Olti Kezo with Vodafone. So I would like to start with Susanna. Susanna, please share your screen. I will stop sharing now.
Thank you, Natalie, for the introduction. Thank you for having me here. And yes, I will try to share now my screen. Please let me know if you can see it.
Yes, yes, it is up. If you want to share it,
okay.
Yeah, we can see it. Thank you so much, Susanna.
Perfect. Okay, after the introduction, I think Rolf did a great introduction for my part, talking about the edge, and that is going to be the glue, between the IoT use cases and the cloud. And now I would like to give you a perspective from the industry point of view. If you remember, in the Rolf show a slide where you could see that the cloud is driving the implementation of the IoT use cases. And we saw that for the consumer IoT, for the mobile application, that is the case. But maybe you remember on the top, there was a gap for manufacturing, where you could see that the cloud adoption is not so great there. And that is what we have also experienced with our customers. And as you know, Siemens is very, very strong in all what is automation, the automation of the industry. And now we are working together with our customers in the direction of the implementation of the Industry 4.0, of the digitalization transformation of our industry. And here is where the edge computing will play a very important role, like closing this gap between what is the soft floor, the field technology, the operation side, and the cloud. But let's start from the beginning, a little bit of history here for those that doesn't know very well how the industry is working today. Very well known is the industry automation pyramid that you can see now on the screen. And it is very hierarchical. That means you cannot connect today from an ERP system or PLM system. PLM is the product life management, where you generate the bill of materials of what you are going to produce. There is no connection between the control layer, the field layer, and this other layer. Everything is hierarchical. You have your sensors, you have the PLCs that are the controllers, where you put a small program to program how the production line have to behave, how long is going to move, which movement, and everything. On top of that, of these PLC programs, you have a SCADA, because from the PLCs, you cannot see anything, just is working. Usually you have programs that are long-term. You program PLC that is controlling your production line, your robot, and usually in the traditional manufacturing, this is being there for years. Only if you have to do updates, then you need to stop your production, and this is a problem. Then you have your SCADA systems that are providing monitoring, where you can see the data, what is happening in these PLCs. You can start setting alarms. It's giving the operators a view, a monitoring on what is happening in production lines. And here goes to the MES system, where you can see if you are producing what you were planning, and also to see which data, what is happening with your production lines. But it's very hierarchical, and this is not helping for the implementation of the new IoT use cases, because this is rigid, and we are looking for the industry for a dynamic environment that allows changing what you are producing, what the manufacturing is doing from one day to another one. And this is today not possible. We are looking for more modular and autonomous production. We are looking for a strong OT orchestration that allows to break these silos, because today the communication is going to the operators, to the ones are managing production, but what about R&D or engineering, they don't have access to the data generated. It's for the industry very difficult to see how they can capitalize the data, no, to get some value added for that. And we see that in the future, everything is going to change from this pyramid to a new revolution of edge and cloud ecosystem. Today, we are seeing already a fusion that IT is coming to OT. If you know what is OT, is these operation technologies, what I was telling you, PLCs, SCADA, what is helping to operate your production lines, to produce, to manufacture. Now comes edge there. And in the first step, edge is coming just like the gateway. No, you are connecting all the brownfield protocols, you are translating them, and you are doing some preparation of the data and sending data to the cloud, or allowing interconnectivity with the IT enterprise systems. That was not possible in this pyramid. What we see now is an evolution, and is where Siemens is working now very hard, is on the edge on-premise. Not just a box, but you have a translation of programs, a translation of protocols, a box where you can deploy applications. And this is going to be a revolution, because we are moving from this static environment where everything was programmed and static to a dynamic environment where you can customize the application, where you can update this application on daily basis. What we see now later is these SCADA operation systems will join with the edge, will be like applications that you can deploy on the edge. And moving to what I was saying, to modular environment where cloud and edge will have a very important role. What more? If you ask me about the end-to-end architecture, I am working as a business developer, pre-sales, more from the cloud level. Of course, the cloud is going to play a very important role here. I don't see the Industry 4.0, I don't see a company going all the digitalization transformation with a cloud solution, because it's where you have all this flexibility to grow and to do big data. But for me, an edge-to-edge use case will be something like that. You have the field level, you have your edge boxes where you can deploy applications that are optimizing your machines. That is not done anymore manually, that you can use the knowledge from Siemens, the knowledge from partners. Coming back to what our colleagues said about ecosystem, for us also is very important. We are a company, we are implementing our edge solutions, but we are open to collaborate with partners, that they bring also the applications and their domain know-how to this ecosystem. For instance, an example of, I said, for me, the cloud is really part of this Industry 4.0, but there are use cases where edge is very, very important for the industry, not only for security, but also for quality, for instance. I know from customers working in the pharma vertical that until we are able to bring these edge solutions, they were producing this batch, the product, and they could only check the quality at the end. And usually that means for them that 30% of what they have produced is not valid, it's waste. Now with the new solution on edge, with camera, with infrared, we can go through the production and learn what is happening and detect quality faults on time and improve it. No, it's very important. Another example for a Siemens factory where we are producing the motherboards for the PLCs. No, you are putting all the small elements, and at the end you have to check if everything is working as it should be. And we do that with X-rays, and these X-ray machines cost like $500,000, and it's very expensive, and this is the bottleneck in the production line. What we do is to select only 10%, 20%, 30%, I don't remember how many units, and to check through the X-ray and say this is good or not, but this is not giving 100% quality. Now with Edge, with streaming analytics, with video, we avoid that, because we know before selecting if you go to the X-ray, it has to go or not. No, there are a lot of applications for it that are going to help to improve operations. And as I said, I am for cloud, and there are things you cannot do on the edge. And for instance, to have a connectivity with the factories. Today, with the corona, we are experiencing that we have to work from home, and you need to have an overview. You have to have a visibility of what is happening in your factories with the production, not only when you are there on the on-premise visualizing a SCADA human interface, but also to see from your home. And also we would like to learn what is happening in a factory and to compare with another factory, apply big data with all the factories. There are companies that have more than 300 productions places. No, it's very important also to think that the cloud is complementing edge. And just not using more time, I would like to present what we from Siemens are naming as the industrial edge. What is the solution? What we think is what our enterprise customers need. This is going to be an ecosystem. The industrial edge was announced for first time in the Hannover Fair last year, and it's coming now as general availability. You can see here the same. We have the automation. The automation is going to talk directly to the, I'm going to put a pointer if I can, yes, here. Here, not using number one automation is what is controlling the production lines. This is going to talk to the edge. What you see here on the edge is that you have a small application that is a small color squares here. And these applications, as I said, we are opening the ecosystem that also our partners can deploy applications. And for that, we will have here an edge runtime that is a proprietary of Siemens that is helping to run all these applications to scale. And the applications will be in a Docker container. We are using Docker as the technology for running this application, for implementing these applications. And we will have what is very important is an edge management system. This edge management system is going to allow the deployment of all these applications on different edge boxes, the monitorization of the edge computing layer, to see which boxes are connected, which firmware have these boxes, to see which application, which version do you have deployed. Very important to have all this control and do that automatically and not going step by step in your on-premise, in your factory to install and deploy each of these applications. Here, just a little bit more detail. You see here the industrial edge having the edge runtime with a set of applications. You see here for a first iteration with our customer, we are thinking about having the industrial edge management on the on-premise, also the industrial edge app repository because the companies still are not used to share everything with the cloud, but the cloud will have a very important role providing here the management of the different industrial edge management systems and also updating the applications and providing this ecosystem. Just what tasks we see in the industry for this edge computing without going into details. Of course, connectivity, that is also the origin of the edge, to have the possibility to talk to green and to brown field devices, to pre-process the data, to add security, very important. This is also the problem with the cloud, that usually you want to isolate PLC operation layer from the internet. You don't want anybody to interact with your production and stop your production line. Third-party applications, very important, not only Siemens applications, but allow the community to deploy and to implement applications that run on Siemens Industry Edge. We are moving intelligence, artificial intelligence to the level of the edge, as the examples I gave you for quality management. And we are now targeting for fast innovation cycles also in the edge, not only on the cloud. And for a long-term scenario, as you see here, what we see is we will have automation connecting to edge device. The edge device will have all this SCADA also embedded as applications. They will do all these tasks as transforming the data, connecting, bringing some intelligence to the edge. But as the capabilities of an edge device are constrained at the end, if you want to do so, for instance, talking about digital twin scenarios where you have the data of simulated of a device, of a product with the real data, you can do that on the edge. We named that application the live twin application. But if you want to work with models of models, for instance, for a customer that I have that is producing vessels, and they want to have the digital twin of the vessel, and for some system you can run on the edge this comparison between simulation and real data. But if you want to have a big picture of the vessel, you have to go to the cloud. And here, of course, when we are talking about cloud, it's not public cloud. Always in a vessel, we will have some on-premise cloud, no? But the technology is there to have now cloud also on the on-premise. And we see that the data is going to get smart on the edge and going then to the cloud where you have more value. And of course, the connective with the rest of the PLM systems is there. And just to finalize, I would like to go through 6 different scenarios, use cases that we think is what is going to come to the edge, no? The possibility to customize applications, to deploy them using Docker, for instance, to increase the operations efficiency. I already told you, you manage everything, all the applications on the edge from the cloud, from the edge management system, to have an overview about all your edge and do that automatically. Now you can also do DevOps on the edge for this application to have a live management of the apps, not from developing to testing to operating, and being able to do short cycles, no, of updating them. This is well known. The use here, the use case of pre-processing and transfer the data to the cloud with less data rate as what you are dealing on the edge. Also because of latency, no, on the edge. I think I forget to tell you, we focus in all this operation layer on criticalities, no, on reacting to these alarms, to these operations that need to be decisions in less than a second. No, you cannot move these kind of solutions to the cloud. And also for visualization, of course, on the premise or sharing the data. What we envision is this is enabling applications on the edge, having applications for connectivity that you can just install the protocol that you need as an application, that you have a data bus that allows application to interact between each other. It's based on NGIoT, a very common protocol and very easy to implement. And then you can generate application as you need. And as not to take more time from you, this is all for today. I hope I could convey the vision of Siemens for the new industrial edge and what is going to be the role. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Susanna. You've added additional visuals to, I think, our visual Rolodex of today. We started with the palmed islands, but yet separated one, moved to the federated clouds, the purple metadata core potential solutions. And now you added the Siemens Azure pyramid of industry automation that I think is going to stay with us, and the edge field level and the connected factories.
Natalie, I see a question asking about this ecosystem. I didn't went in detail because I didn't have the time, but what we are providing is all the applications that run on the edge are Dockerized. You only need to provide a Docker image with the Docker Compose, and that's put in the Docker repository of the company, and then the edge management system will help you. And other requirement is that you want communication with other connectors, like reading the data from the PLC with S7, that is the protocol of Siemens. Just you need to be able to communicate with the NGIoT data bus.
Mm-hmm. Susanna, there are 2 more questions. I think we gained a bit of time, so I think it's okay with the questions now, but we have 2 more speakers of the panel. So
okay, then
so if you can answer.
Okay.
Yeah, there are 2 more. You see
moving up, I have to look. How do you see the content?
It's in
federation platform. I really think that it will be the topic of the future. It's not possible to have only one cloud solution. I also believe on the gravity of the data, no? That you cannot move the data from one place to another one and copy. And the problem we have always Siemens working with other companies, you have to be open. We are open. We support all the standard protocols. But at the end, each of the solution I know today, they need to have the data in their side. You know, if you are collaborating, for instance, with another platform that is going to be predictive maintenance, because they are the experts and they need the data that we get from the OT layer, not from the operation layer. At the end, they need to do a copy of the data in their platform. And yeah, we have to avoid that and go for the federation. I really think is the idea. Mm-hmm. And the value of edge in
Then the question is Siemens implementing planning asset administration shell? Right?
Okay, that was up. From the asset administration, if it's going, I don't understand the question, if it's asset is the edge boxes or asset are the assets of the company.
Pedro,
we have.
You would like to voice the question? You can unmute yourself and ask it.
Hi, Susanna, Pedro here.
Hi, Pedro.
So an asset administration shell is a specification from German Industry 4.0 to implement, let's say, a normalized shell for assets to provide data, right? So to provide their data. So it's might be a kind of middleware for digital twin of the machine of the asset. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So in that way, it would be duly interoperable, right? If you provide it and implement AAS natively. The question is if in your edge boxes you are planning or you are doing that.
We have done that, not following a standard. We have implemented what we name our own IoT model. That is a hierarchical model based on assets. Asset can be what you define as company, a device, a sensor, or a whole system. That gives you already a model for building up this IoT model that you need, no? That without having this responsibility to our customers to think about how to model everything is quite dynamic to do that. Today, everything is moving more in the direction of adding metadata, adding relationships and context to this hierarchical layer. There's a lot of topics in where we are working Siemens together with Microsoft and AWS as partners to build this kind of graph and not only assets, but relationship between the assets. I don't know if I give you an answer, but this is what we are now working in Siemens.
Thank you. Thanks, Susanna. Maybe one more question and then we will move to next speaker. So from a question from Rolf, the value of the Siemens Edge is quality of scale of apps for customization. How do you imagine a standardized solution plan to cooperate with open source or open standards?
As I said, when we started the idea of the Edge, Siemens Edge, we thought about bringing your own hardware, not just providing the runtime. That is the part of Siemens. This runtime have this data bus that you can communicate with applications. All the applications are Dockerized. That means that is open standards and MQTT is an open standard. It's a mix of proprietary solution plus opener. Yeah, cooperate with open source there. I cannot give you an answer more because I come from the side of the cloud. But if you would like to have, I will ask my colleagues and give you an answer here.
Okay, and thank you. Maybe very quick one related to how do you see the concept of federated platforms where MindSphere can be one of them, and as well as the relation to the GaiaX data space?
Here I answered already that I think federation of platforms is the way to go. About the GaiaX data space, I don't think that we are doing anything in this direction.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. For the sake of keeping time, we'll leave you at this. And if you can stay probably for the session of the Q&A, that'd be great. Thank you so much, Susanna.
I will do that. Thank you. Ciao.
Yeah, ciao. So if we can move to the next presenter at the panel, Albert Sobers with Atos. Albert, I think you're free to share the presentation with us. Thank you so much. And since we're trying to save time for the lengthy presentations of speakers, please feel free to introduce yourself. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Natalie. So my name is Albert Sobers. I work with Atos and responsible for our local government business or digital city business. And in the field of digital cities, we all are citizens somewhere, and we see the impact of new IoT developments and therefore the need for clear IoT and edge strategy for cities. And all what has been said here so far, a platform approach to city edge, a federation of platforms it all comes in our daily lives where we start embedding IoT or sensor data in helping us achieve a more higher quality of life in the cities. Meaning that on the left side, we have more and more sensors or devices that we connect, whether it's operational, whether it's sensing, whether it's helping people to find ways or getting into certain locations, where the data we use and the data analytics we use to create true and real-time information out of the data we need is moving one hand to the right side, where we have more cloud strategies working with governments to build that up, whether it's working with multi-cloud, single cloud, on-premise, hybrid cloud, all the variations are in there. But we see there's a need for analytics on site. And in our daily lives, this is what we need. Bringing data from a sensor to the cloud and then moving information back to a digital display that your train is going to be late is not really optimizing the data processing time up to a level where we see more cameras recording data. We do not want them to record everything. So we could use edge analytics to analyze the video footage and detect what needs to be stored and how we can generate a response that is needed without storing the data. But it means edge in the middle is very important. And what we've seen and discussed in the previous presentations is it's the high-end AI-enabled edge devices that sometimes are even in the cloud or on site, on premise. But there is a need for micro edge. Swarm computing. If we have a digital city and we need new technology, or we have new analytic routines, or we're searching for information, it does not make sense to have a cloud analytics run it through the high-end AI machines and then trying to find its way. So swarm computing enabled by the micro edge is where we can easily deploy, rapidly deploy new ways of analyzing information, even if it's only needed for the next 30 minutes because we're looking for something. So that means a platform of platforms approach is very, very important because that micro edge will not touch only the video as I used here, but it could also be used to detect the security push buttons and see what we need. So swarm in the edge field is the next step, I would say. And the whole idea behind this is that if we start creating the digital city, the aim is to create a trusted platform environment. So it needs reliability, we need scalability, and for all, we need to be able to manage it. So whether that's a device or a software layer we embed in the networks, we did some first project with micro edge employed in the Things network in Spanish airports, where we can connect the smallest type of devices, but also secure it and run analytics already in the network without even creating the need of storing data. So trust and privacy are very, very important elements here. And by building this up, and the term already was used, the data economy, if you have a multi-tenant technology layer in your city, as a city, you can accept services from third parties that commit and collaborate in your open standards of interaction. You can have them implement technology in the city using I would say, call it edge as a service type of platform that you can offer as part of a data economy in your city. Because edge in cities is getting more and more important, and you can understand, I touched on the cameras and the security push buttons, but with autonomous vehicles and more connected vehicles in your city, there's a vast amount of data floating between the grid and vehicles and vehicle to vehicle. You need interaction between them, and you need local technology to analyze the data, make the connection. Even if it's just exchanging of data, without analytics, you already define your need for local edge or micro edge in your networks. And this means that it will limit the data that you need to transport. It allows you to provide more services locally for people in your city, visitors, your own residents. And we sometimes touch on this and call it edge is basically the post-cloud era. We're still moving to the cloud. We're still creating our cloud strategy. But in building a cloud strategy, you have to embed your edge strategy. at the moment, because it allows you to speed up the implementation of much more services and personalization of services to your citizens, and creating a more inclusive city. Just as an example, and I often use this, inclusive transportation with more autonomous transportation. People still need to move autonomously, self-supporting in the cities. If you're disabled and you would like to use the metro lines, you need to have real-time information about an elevator, if it's working, yes or no, because you could find yourself confined to a platform because if the elevator's not working. So that calls for multi-tenant edge, because the elevator is one service, the railway is another service, and it combines the data for a personalized service from the city to your the people on the street. So edge is a post-cloud technology we need to embed. And the whole idea behind this is that if you can reduce your latency, you start working with different networks, multiple networks, and you have your micro edge deployed, or it allows you to, as I said, create that data economy and build up services and get more personalized services. That means open collaboration in cities is a possibility. Now we see siloed procurement of services on lighting, on traffic, but it becomes one platform that you can enable different services from different ecosystem partners that will easily collaborate and start working. It makes light a technology to communicate in different ways than we use now. It makes people be in touch on healthy lifestyles, working, walking, running, cycling in your city, to be connected and understand what's happening in that area where they are at the moment, because it's not safe to be in hazardous areas while you want to be perform a healthy lifestyle. So that makes the whole interaction between different data providers and data technologies come together in the edge and make it work for you. The micro edge and the swarm technology is one step further. If we move from current transportation modes in the city and we really start implementing, let's call it drone technology, so urban air logistics, swarm compute between these elements that transport goods, whether they're large, big scale, whatever they are, they need to start working together and interact. So the only thing from a management perspective is you need the protocols, you need the regulations to be implemented, but this technology need to be communicating by itself. So there's one step further from a managed environment is more an autonomous micro edge connectivity and analytics you can run on it, or protocols you can start working on it. So that's the next step in securing edge communication and edge analytics. So that means just looking back where we are today, just give you a field of what we see is the future. Today, we see edge in cameras. We've been doing a project 6 years ago where we detected anomalies in people's behavior on the street. We can analyze sounds, combine that with the anomaly in movement patterns, and send alerts to the police. So it's about cost saving. You don't need less people on the street to do this. It's about optimizing safety, the field of public safety. It's not touching your privacy. We do not know who you are, where you are, but we see parts in that city. The city of Nice is working on that now. We're working with larger cities in France prepared for the Olympic Games, where there's a need to track people of interest. And from a negative side, I could say that's where you see people that have deviant behavior. You want to see where they move through the city. But on the positive side, and we've tested this, is while we can do this with several cameras from different vendors connected through the edge network, if a child has gone missing, the officers can have an application on a smartphone entering some specific elements of the child, red trousers, a yellow jacket, whatever, and you can start searching through the edge, through your micro network, and find matching elements. Of course, that could be always been but it will hit the child in the area, so you can easily retrieve it. So there's different use cases of the same technology, but it's all come down to the fact that you need to secure the access, you need to manage it, and you have to be able to deploy analytics at the far edge, so you can speed up the whole reset time and be more agile in how to interact and be personalizing your services in digital cities. And I touched on traffic. What we see more and more cities preparing for limited access of personalized vehicles into the city. You still need logistics, delivery, you still need special purpose vehicles to enter there. You don't want to create a completely confined in a city with toll barriers, all that. So it means automatic detection of types of vehicles, classification, without even recording license plate, because that makes it, again, privacy intrusive. But if you're there and detect it and see what you can do, this again needs and drives the need of simple applications, but a well-defined open architecture of edge technologies that can be deployed in cities. And then the multi-tenant use of that technology is very important. So working with the OASC on the interoperability mechanism, this touches the importance of knowing the device, knowing the data sets, knowing the application exactly, and then providing a network to do that. And on top, personal data is something you don't want to store, you need it, but you can deploy it on a device of the person carrying it, connecting to that same edge network. And so, well, I need information on transportation, inclusive transportation. This is my profile. And you don't need to store it in the cloud. You can share it from your own device. So this is how far we see the future in the digital cities will be impacted by deploying edge and micro edge networks. I'm stopping here. Hope there's some questions.
Yes, I will check the chat in a moment. Thank you so much, Albert. So just in summary, you brought in the image, additional image to the Rolodex of the post-cloud era with micro edge and the swarm computing notions. As well as the push, need, drive, and the reasons for the well-defined open architectures within the smart cities, among many other concepts. So thank you so much for the presentation. Let me check if there are questions right away in the chat. Not at the moment, but then after one more presentation, we have a Q&A session. So we will get back to you. Thank you so much, Albert.
You're welcome, Natalie.
Thank you. As mentioned, we have one more presentation in this panel, and I would like to invite Olti Xezo with Vodafone to share his presentation and his views on the topic of the far edge applications, investment priorities, and partnerships mobilization. Thank you so much, Olti.
Hi, good morning, and thanks for having me. I think it's quite an insightful discussion so far, and I'm quite happy to be part of this panel of discussion. In the next 10 minutes or so, what I'll try to take the audience through is a short journey in between what Vodafone has done so far in terms of exploring and deploying the capabilities and the potential behind edge computing, and then explain a bit what that practically means in terms for our customers, our business customers, and the benefits behind the edge computing. I will then quickly go through a couple of use cases that we have been exploring very recently, which I'm quite happy to share with you in one of our most promising partnerships. And then at the very end, I'll focus a bit in the importance of the ecosystem and the need to provide end-to-end solution for our business customers. So with that in mind, as I'll try to skip through my slides, Statista, and I'm using that as a source, predicts that by 2030, more or less, we will have circa 50 billion connected devices. And within those, for example, I'm mentioning smart cameras, that they will be used around the world. Now, why I'm doing that? The intelligence and the impact of these smart cameras, and more broadly the IoT devices in general, depends on a couple of things. Now, it's for example, the ability of the device to capture what's going on in the world, and then we have whether the artificial intelligence powered application can interpret the information from the device and react in real time. And then we have the cloud that these applications runs on. And then we have the capacity and the responsiveness of the network to support. Now, this means that multi-access edge computing, or MEC as we quickly refer to it, will certainly become an essential part of the IT infrastructures. And that is thanks to the power that it has to change how quickly we can bring data to the cloud. MEC offers IT services and cloud at the edge of the network. And from a business customer perspective, is a truly game-changing, if I could say, for situations where milliseconds matter. Now, from our perspective, edge computing brings what, if I can put it like, the best of both worlds, combining the agility of the public cloud with the high responsiveness of having an on-premise solution. It helps to reduce the network congestion and speeds up the application performance, brings high definition graphics, virtual reality comes to play, gaming, and more mobile IoT devices into play. Now, think, for example, of a situation when you have, for instance, a police officer wearing a video camera that would stream in real time, and it's able to send instantaneous alerts to help with accident prevention, crowd monitoring, or even public safety. Now, why we say that milliseconds matter, and whether multi-access edge computing really does make a difference. Now, response time of, because we mentioned this briefly as far as I've heard in the previous conversation. Now, a response time of circa 100 milliseconds from a user experience is perceived as instantaneous. Now, what MEC does is it brings that down to 10 milliseconds, and that happens between the base station and the cloud. And there are cases even when we have a dedicated MEC to a single site where the latency will go down to even 1 millisecond. Now, typically today, mobile data responses from our statistics would range between 50 to 200 milliseconds. Very recently, we managed to achieve a very low latency time, which is the total round trip time from the base station to the location where the MEC application service hosted. And that was the case of 10 milliseconds circa between a test location that we had near Newbury in the south of England and Birmingham in the Midlands. So in this slide, what I'm trying to show is that what is the power of such ecosystem for a network operator and the business customers that we empower. Now, connected data services, let me say this, are like the North Star of a modern enterprise organization. Now, when you manage to have cloud connectivity and data working all together, now businesses are empowered and have all the tools to become more adaptive, more intelligent. And these are all the qualities that have made a difference for those organizations navigating through 2020, and they did it better than the other ones. Now, in the future, we will have more and more businesses moving their decision-making down to the edge, and the information and the machines will connect and communicate, and sometimes they'll do it with one another without us being aware at all. What that means for a business customer is that their workers can spend more time focusing on the strategy of the business and spend less time on focusing or maintaining whatever are the daily tasks that they are currently doing. Now, what this means is that this will open up a world of possibilities for all sorts of new applications. And I'm thinking from autonomous vehicles we mentioned earlier, smart robots, smart manufacturing equipment, all of which are very relevant for the industrial IoT ecosystem. Now, we're talking about reliable connectivity here, which is paired with real-time response, and that is the game-changing equation, especially when we refer to what we call the mission-critical applications. So think, for example, driving a self-autonomous car and a pedestrian stepping into the road in front of you, and then certainly you need the vehicle to react immediately and apply the brakes so that we can avoid collision with a person. Now, any delay into this communication would cause a life-threatening incident. Now, we have a similar situation in smart factories and autonomous machinery, which need to be able to respond straight away so that they can ensure the worker's safety. Now, for those of you that are fans of gaming, such as I am, if you have ever experienced what they call the motion sickness, that usually happens because we're hovering around a latency of circa 30 to 40 milliseconds. And with Mac in place, certainly they will go down and you'll have a more immersive experience in a gaming situation. And not to mention that on top of that, we have a realistic graphic experience when it comes to virtual and augmented reality. And even for the sports fan, they will be able to enjoy a more immersive experience when they play goal, for example, from several pitch level angles. From a network perspective, we have been deploying two different types of Mac. Now, the first one is the dedicated edge. What it means is this is the one that is great for all the remote locations that are very hard to connect, and it's suitable for industries such as mining, heavy goods, oil, gas, or for example, the optimized factory, the smart factory that we mentioned. Now, a dedicated edge, it's also very good for those tasks that could require a very low response time. So I'm thinking of a live remote operated surgery. Now, the reason I'm saying this is a dedicated edge, it's built solely with the specific business needs in mind. This is being deployed at a specific site. It bundles together edge computing with a mobile private network and provides secure, dedicated connectivity and computing for any business or other organizations. Now, with dedicated edge, customer data will be stored locally, enabling applications that depend on it will provide minimum delay to work, and this can open up new possibilities for the organizations within sites that previously they couldn't be connected. Now, when we discuss distributed edge, I think this is the more common understanding, is the one that supports multiple businesses, and this one is embedded from a network perspective or a customer perspective, that there's less need for an investment in network infrastructure. Now, this specific type of edge might be particularly useful when we connect moving assets, such as the self-driving vehicle that I mentioned earlier, that needs to be connected and its data needs to be analyzed in a matter of milliseconds. Now, by embedding computing and storage services at the edge of the network, now customers are able to run applications with almost no delay and making decision-making in quite real time, so to say. Now, use cases here would include video analytics, real-time asset inspection, and drones we mentioned earlier, but as well as immersive experience in retail, events, tourism, and so forth. Now, there's another use case that I'm thinking of distributed edge, for example, in the emergency services. A distributed Mac will mean that a paramedic team can video call medical staff at the hospital while they are en route, and with a greater understanding of the emergencies coming in, doctors certainly can be better prepared for the arrivals. I don't know why I keep jumping out of this full screen mode. On this slide, I wanted to focus a bit on one of our more promising partnership for the deployment of edge solutions and the benefits it's bringing to all the European organizations, or as we like to say it, we bring the Europe to the edge. Now, in the context of the new ecosystem that I mentioned earlier, we have been collaborating with Amazon Web Services to make AWS Wavelength, their solution, available in Europe. And we made an announcement almost a year ago with Wavelength, which basically supports ultra-low latency by enabling compute and storage services at the edge of Vodafone network. And that is designed to provide MEC capabilities to the developers, to Internet of Things, IoT devices, and to end users. Now, there are lots of benefits around it. So, for example, developers have the ability to build applications that serve end users with single-digit milliseconds, I mentioned earlier, on the 5G network, along with embedding AWS compute and storage services. We have enhanced responsiveness when it comes to artificial intelligence, augmented and virtual reality, video analytics, autonomous vehicles, robotics, drones. And it's quite a quick to market and scalable solution that meets customers' demand, but also minimizes what is important for us, the customers' switching concerns. And the existing AWS customers find it quite familiar to use these APIs and tools and functionalities. Now, only last week, our team of Vodafone Business announced a powerful new service combining the ultra quick response times of distributed MEC, in this case, technology, with the fast speeds of 5G that builds on this specific partnership with Wavelength. Now, we're very happy to say that I think we're the first company in Europe to enable organizations to create pilot applications using distributed MEC with AWS services. Now, this is made possible by embedding AWS at the edge of our 4G and 5G networks and bringing customers and their key applications closer together. Now, our distributed MEC service will start rolling out from the spring of 2021. We will start initially with a first commercial center in London, and we will have other locations to follow in UK and Germany. And we believe that this will give to business customers, to application developers, to independent software vendors, a head start, if I can say, in developing new digital services and access real-time analytics so that they can better respond to events and to the end user needs. Now, the commercial MEC center in London will provide ultra-low latency zone over a wide area and make use of Vodafone 5G network in the capital. We have an additional beta trial, which is due to open in Düsseldorf, Germany, and that will happen early next year. And we will also have availability in Dortmund, I think later in 2021. A couple of use cases, perhaps, which are quite relevant to make the discussion more tangible. We have quite innovative companies like the ones of Dedron, Digital Barriers, GrobView, Unleash Live, that have already built successfully tested applications in Vodafone test facilities. For example, Dedron is an airspace security services that provides early warning, classification, and localization of drones. Then we have Digital Barriers, which is a video analytics that uses body-worn cameras for frontline workers in emergency situation. And then we have HERE Technologies, which is an application that provides real-time hazard warning services for safer road enablement, with that is quite relevant for increasing digital traffic scenarios. And then we have Unleash Live, which is an artificial intelligence-powered video analytics platform, which is built to automate real-time visual oversight and alerts for cities, enterprises, infrastructures, and for example, on public safety needs, including passenger safety, risk alerts at train station, face masks can be relevant, and social distancing in public. Now, in my last slide.
Okay, yeah, if you can wrap up.
Yes. Yes, I'll do so. There are only two elements which are worth mentioning in this slide. I mentioned earlier the power of providing an ecosystem, and I agree with all the participants what was mentioned earlier. In that space, we strive the most to provide end-to-end solution to our customers. I'm not mentioning our managed IoT connectivity platform, but perhaps I'll quickly skip to Vodafone Business App Invent, which is an application enablement service that is a connectivity-powered platform that is able to combine a wide range of standardized functions within a rapid application development environment. This is a platform where end-to-end IoT solutions can be built, deployed faster, brings more functionality, and what is important for our customers, there's less risk for them in the solution. So I think I'll stop here sharing my slides, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them either offline or in the chat. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Olti. Please stay with us. A couple additional visuals and the concepts shares and the interesting use cases, which are always interesting to analyze for the applicability of the technologies. So thanks for the intervention. I would like to move into our discussion time. And for that, I would like to ask the participants of the first part of the event to switch their cameras on so that we can see who's still with us. There is a couple questions in the chat, but also I have some questions to the panelists. So we have, yes, who's here? Excellent. Susanna, you still with us? Yes. Okay. Good. Okay. Olti, you're staying with us as well. So maybe if we can, it's been intense couple hours of the lots of concepts, sharing ideas and the presentations. So now maybe because it is also part of the ecosystem building and collaborative environment situation. So I would like probably to ask the presenters to reflect also on some of the statements the colleagues made in the discussions. And make some final remarks or the conclusions based on that, and maybe reflect on the which key industrial sectors and what particular barriers are there that need to be overcome for envisioning this, and then the second round a little bit on the envisioning the optimal future. So one is the easier question, the other one is a little bit more complicated one, and we probably can do the 2 rounds because we have approximately 10 minutes for this. So if I can please start with Susanna.
Could you repeat the question? Sorry, I have
yes.
So the internet connection was, and I didn't hear the question.
So the first question, if you would like to reflect or make some of the comments related to the presentations that were done by other panelists in relation to your presentation, or the key topic of the key industrial sectors and the drivers, and maybe make a statement related to the how do you envision the optimal future in relation to the topic of the workshop.
In relation to that, I think now I have a very bad connection because
in relation to the topic of the workshop.
The far edge.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with what the other colleagues were presenting. Ecosystem is very important. We will have different kind of edge solution, micro edge, other kind of edge. In my area, I'm working always with the enterprise and different verticals, like with automotive industry, with food and beverage. We are covering a lot of different industries, and the edge is the way to go, as I said before, for implementing all these use cases. You need to have an open ecosystems, and I think, yeah, this kind of conference are very important for reaching this and having a kind of a standardization of how to deploy applications and open the ecosystem to work together.
So there is value of the joint effort in this.
Yes, I think so. And I think also for companies like Siemens, this is always a difficult topic But we are seeing, because I have been starting to work for Siemens in the research departments, I have seen that we are opening to that, not to be in all the standardizations and be part of building open platforms and ecosystems.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Susanna. I'll come back to you as to the envisioning the optimal future in the second round. It's a bit hard to see all the cameras, so I see Olti over here. So Olti, maybe you can comment as well.
I wouldn't stop stressing or emphasizing the importance not only on partnerships, which help us connect through the whole ecosystem, but from our perspective, what has proved quite successful is providing a complete ecosystem and end-to-end solution to the customers. And then again, that goes back to the partnerships. And I know that we often refer into these discussions the macro type of partnerships, but when it comes to business deployment, also the individual partnerships from players in one certain ecosystem, in one specific industry or vertical with another one can make a difference in deploying solution. And I believe this is time critical now because it has been proven that digitalization is the key to speed up recovery. And we're not referring only to large multinational corporations, but we're referring to the beating heart of the European economies, which is SMEs. And the sooner they realize that there's power in digitalization to get them across this specific challenging times and then prepare them for a future or building back better in a resilient environment, the better will be for them to employ and deploy these solutions.
Yes, that's very important angle. Thanks for bringing up the SMEs and the topic into the discussion also. So once again, I will come back to you with the envisioning the optimal future scenario in the next round. I don't see all the cameras on, but Martin, would you like to comment as well?
No, I'm just very happy to see this focus on really starting with the ecosystems. It's what we need. It's also kind of difficult to see then. Well, from the outside, it's difficult to see what are the technical implications. How do you build this ecosystem interoperability? I'm sure some of the speakers that are coming up now will focus on that. But we need that, and the challenge is that these big full stack, full specification architectures, they don't travel between sectors, between ecosystems. So what can we actually, how can data travel with the context? I think that's what we need to find out. So I'm very happy to see that so many actors are actually looking into this.
Thank you, Martin. I think it resonates with all what Olti mentioned a moment ago, is this cross-domain and cross-industry importance, not only on the learning, but also on the operational side. Thanks, Martin. I would like to give floor to Gael. Gael, are you still with us?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So if you would like to comment as well.
Yeah, well, I think that in terms of, I'm just seeing the last comment from Rolf, that is that the entry point in the ecosystem is a cooperation with Microsoft or AWS. And I think that yeah, well, when we talk about ecosystem, we can either talk about having new islands and new siloed ecosystems. We can talk about having an open APIs to try to reconcile the different isolated ecosystems. But even better, and that's what we could do. We can do in open source altogether. We can create such an interoperable open source platform to connect all the islands. And when we already have some interesting projects in this domain in what I presented in the introduction. For example, we have like yesterday, Angelo Corsaro did a presentation of Zeno as a new communication protocol. we are also the home of lots of MQTT connections, but that's only the communication. And if you want to go further, we have those two interesting edge computing platforms, IOFOG and FOGO5, that are really complementary. And you were talking in your presentation about Susanna, you were talking about Docker instance, and for example, IOFOG completely leverages Kubernetes for edge computing. So, well, I think that open APIs, I saw open APIs in several of the presentation. I think that open APIs are good, but I would say that open APIs supported by open source platforms are much better and an order of magnitude better in terms of ecosystem building.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much.
Maybe a question from my side, Gail.
Good.
With this statement of, yeah, open APIs are good, but open platforms are better. The problem I see with the open platform is that someone have to operate them. No, you have the SMAs that they look for operated platforms, and if you offer this open platform, who is going to take care of everything, of scaling, of having that running? No.
Yeah, well, that's what I had only 5 minutes this morning, so that I will.
Maybe I missed something.
But that's what I meant when I said that not everything has to be open source, and that, I mean, and please don't make me say something that I didn't say. I mean, when I talk about open source, I definitely not talk about everything being free and with a zero price and available for everybody. I think that the future of open standards is to have open standards with open source implementations, because then you have a much better. It's much easier to ensure interoperability, and you know that the devil is in the details. That if we just have a document specification, and then of course there will be maybe one small detail in one of the new silos that will be implemented one way, and the same detail will be implemented in another way, and then you lose this easy connection. So I mean that open source platforms, their role is really to ensure better interoperability, to ensure better collaboration. But the role of product companies like Siemens, Vodafone, or Atos, that's still the role to address their customers' problems and to provide the end-to-end. At some point, you mentioned end-to-end service. And that's still, this role still exists.
Yes, I agree. Thank you.
That's really complementary approaches, not opposing approaches.
I think also.
My reaction is just that you were all more mentioning proprietary technologies. And I think that this kind of offering new platforms with proprietary technologies is good, but when we want to interconnect the ecosystems, we should not reject the idea that open source is the best way to do the interconnection.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Maybe a question linked to what you were saying. There is a question in the chat. By the way, all the speakers and presenters, if you would like to address the topics that are piling up in the chat, feel free so. I think we can use a couple more minutes from the next session for this, because the discussion is interesting. But the question is, what is the role that Eclipse can play in conjunction with the EU Commission to make this happen? The question is from Angelo Costara.
Yeah, so the role we can play is that, and that goes to also maybe the answer to this question is that we should not put all our open source software on GitHub, and I have nothing against GitHub. I mean, Microsoft is a member of the Eclipse Foundation. We are friends, no problem. But I have something about the fact that it's almost automatic for a company to create open source code and push it to GitHub, and to think that that's the solution to an open source ecosystem. And that's not, because you have access to the developers, but you don't have a good vendor neutral open source governance. And that's where we can help, and that's why we move to Europe. Moving to Europe is because we think that in Europe there is a clear need for an open source foundation with what my colleagues call an international reach and reputation, and we want to provide this capability to the European ecosystem. That
the governance topics that
governance and creating and also there is some cultural topic, I think. And I think that, well, I was keeping that for my conclusion, but I will say it now as you ask. I think that lots of countries are now integrating open source in their soft power. Like if you think about the US, and that's of course a very short version of it, but you have Hollywood, and you have and you also have the open source technologies now. And I think that you can hear that I'm French, and in France we have this cultural very strong will to maintain our cinema industry. And I think that with open source, we can also have this cultural approach and push our approach to data, which is already different with the GDPR, but also to the rest of the technologies, to the rest of the world.
So extension of the European values, maybe also into the open source. Yeah, thank you so much. We have, thank you, Gael. So from the previous session, we still have, I don't think Boris is with us any longer. Boris?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so we have Albert and Rolf. So Albert and Rolf, starting with Albert, probably, if you would like to comment.
I'm afraid Albert has left us too.
Okay, so that just gives a bit more time for Rolf and saves us a little bit more time. Rolf, would you like to comment?
Yeah, thank you, Natalie. I think I followed the discussion with interest because much of the work of the wording, what we had under what we call under platform strategy, under Industry 4.0, is echoed also today. You know, I think the value of the platform is given through the size of the ecosystem, and we cannot have building an open ecosystem without sort of open APIs, open specifications, and I fully confirm what Gail said, that open source is not for free. It's not putting it on GitHub, but you know, you have to reinvest in order to in the governance of the open source code, in the release strategy and the applicability, and to put it to the next level. Otherwise, it just dies and sits in the corner. But my main concern still is, I think we had a discussion in the chat also, you know, what's the role and the importance to cooperate with the hyperscalers, Microsoft and Amazon. I think, yes, it's good to leverage their innovation potential and the scale of the cloud storage. But to what extent, you know, do we risk to be bypassed by, you know, the large innovation speed they're demonstrating? Or to what extent is Europe still able to build sort of a European ecosystem in order to compete on the innovation speed, including the benefits of the cloud infrastructure they've built without losing our competence?
Yes, big question, big challenge. So as thanks, Rolf. So since we're already out of time, I would like, but since I asked the question about the envisioning the future or optimal future, so the speakers who were presenting, if you would like to comment quickly on that.
Yeah, maybe I can start. That's before here from my point of view, working with the enterprise. What my experience is that there are a lot of strategic plan for the digitalization, no? But we have started for a couple of years with POC, and still we are in this POC phase, no? Still trying to look for isolated solutions, and we have a lot of silos of information. My ambition of the future will be when we are breaking that, and everything is connected, and we can move to more advanced use case like this self-optimized systems, no? To have a blueprint of what will be the right architecture, combining edge and cloud and on-premise or not, that we are still experimenting a lot in this direction. Like the topics around federation of data, federation of clouds is a lot to cover still. And I would like to leave this, and I hope I will see a lot of advance in the next years.
Thank you. Thank you, Susanna. Anyone else would like also to comment? Olti, future vision? You're still on mute.
Sorry, hope you can hear me now.
Yes, yes.
I think I'll go back to the headline of my presentation, which is milliseconds matter. And in order to progress the ecosystem and have ambitious goals toward Industry 4.0, we need to do the maximum in order to enable all these partnerships, well-functioning ecosystems, and provide end-to-end solutions. And in order to achieve that, we have to do it all together. I don't think there's anything to add to the conversation from my perspective at this point. Thanks.
Thank you. Gael, I know you're still with us.
Yeah, nothing to add for the moment, thanks.
Okay. All right, so since Albert and Boris is not with us, hopefully I didn't miss anyone else, unless Rolf also wants to envision the future.
I'm fine now, I think. We had a lot of discussion. I think maybe a quick comment on that. We somehow introduced a different taxonomy of edge computing. So we've seen that, particularly from Susanna and Siemens, they strongly favor the orchestration between the cloud and the edge. The edge as an app, an open app ecosystem. Where you can customize to the user needs. Which is sort of the strong link to the OT, and we've seen from OT as a mobile operator the need to reduce the latency via mobile networks in order to make sort of edge devices and edge data transparent and available to cloud applications in order to have this fast processing and reaction. So we have seen two types already. And I think for sure in the future we'll see more notions of implementations of edge systems. And I suppose from my personal view that convergence on these different views will happen not now, but I think it will take some more time until we have sort of a clear picture.
Thank you, Rolf. Cannot overstress the importance of this initial building blocks for anything that we envision in the future, such as marketplaces, both on data and services. So if we need to get it right in order to get the rest of the building blocks, both envisioned in the pyramid and as well as in the purple core, as I call it, is of relevance and importance. I got the message that Boris just came back, so I don't know, Boris, if you would like to comment on envisioning the optimal future.
I just joined, so I'm not in the context of the discussion, so I would probably comment later.
All right, thank you. So without, then I would like to conclude this part of the event and move to the next one. So let me share the screen very briefly so that you can see who our speakers Next. I would like to step into the second session of the event, IoT and Edge Computing. So our next panel is focused on industry to work in partnerships with possible industrial associations. So lots of questions already been raised, but a lot of questions still remain, and we're looking forward to hear the perspectives from AIoTI, represented by Jürgen Strum and Georgios Karagiannis, with two complementary aspects on these topics. Simon Meyer with the University of St. Gallen, Gael Blondel and Lindsay Frost. Very warm welcome to the panelists. And I would like to give floor to Jürgen Strum. I will stop sharing the presentation now, so please go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Natalie. On the technicalities, I think I need to share the screen.
That would be great.
Shall I share the screen, Jürgen?
Okay, Georgios, because you kick off and I follow then maybe it's best that you share, yeah, indeed.
That's the collaboration in action, actually.
That's what defines us, yeah.
We can see the screen. Yes, and
okay,
now
good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Go ahead, Jürgen. Well, then I will start. So, yeah. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this workshop for inviting me. My name is Georgios Karagiannis, and I'm the steering board chair of IoTI. And my colleague Jürgen Sturm will also participate in this presentation. He is the management board chair of IoTI. So in this presentation, what we'd like to do is to provide a short, to give a short overview of the IoTI mission. And also on the IoTI focus on the future dimensions, on the IoTI strategic research and innovation agenda, including SME perspective. So we think that SMEs are very important in this context. That's why I'd like to provide some information on that. And as well on some strategic challenges that we see on in the area of IoT and Edge Computing, and as well the new opportunities that IoTI is providing in this area. So yeah, so here you see the mission and vision of IoTI. So as you can see in this slide, the mission of IoTI is to drive actually business, policy, research, innovation in the IoT and edge computing, but as well for other converging technologies. And these converging technologies could be artificial intelligence, digital twin, but as well distributed ledger technologies and intelligent connectivity at the edge. And then you can think of 5G, 6G, and other types of connectivity that could be applied at the edge. And across the digital value chain. So to support digitization in Europe and to support the competitiveness of Europe. And in particular, I would like also to mention, and I think that's an important point, is that we as well cooperate with other global regions to ensure the removal of barriers to the development of IoT and edge computing market. So not only locally, but also globally. And then I would like to show you here what is the IoTI focus in the area of IoT and edge computing. So yeah, we try to separate, this focus in four main parts. And the most important one is the leadership. So as leadership, IoTI is driving IoT and industrial IoT applications in vertical domains, driving as well the vision of IoT, industrial IoT, and edge computing for the future, and driving IoT and industrial IoT as engine for converging technologies, the converging technologies that I just listed previously. And from the point of view of contribution, so IoT was contributing and will continue contributing and collaborating with European policies and strategies, and provides input to standardization bodies. Then from the point of view of collaboration is more related to the contributions and the collaboration that we have in the relevant European funding programs and partnerships. And it is important to mention that this is in a European, but also in an international dimension. And then we'll also try to cooperate with others and learn, and as well share information and share knowledge on using distributed ledger technologies that could be applied to industrial sectors, and as well on data connectivity and computing, in particular computing continuum, where actually edge computing and cloud computing need to be somehow synchronized. So now I would like to continue with the SRIA, so that's the IoTI Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda. So I mentioned here only 2 points, but of course there are more. These are the key main dimensions. So the IoT and edge computing vision is actually to support a self-organizing system that allows implementation of decentralized and distributed computing, connectivity, processing, and collective and federated learning. And this could be realized by expanding further and using the findings of the IoT and edge computing white paper that we have. And I hope that you have already seen the URL. And as well build on the IoTI experience that we have, and propose contributions to testbeds, but also to private funded projects and other European funded projects, as the digital innovation hubs, and to don't forget the large-scale pilots that we have already participated in the context of IoT. I will then continue to the next one, and that's about SMEs. So the SME perspective. It is maybe very important to mention that IoTI actually has different types of the members are different types of stakeholders. So there are large industries, SMEs, and then also industries that are working on the horizontal domain and industries that are working on vertical domain. So we're able to somehow form an ecosystem of the different players that you can see in a value chain in the context of IoT and edge computing. So SMEs, they were in the beginning when we started IoTI, but also now, and will continue with that. They form a very important pillar in our association. So therefore, we're actually cooperating and trying to find ways on how they can profit from this alliance. So as you see here, I'm listing some of the points. So one of the goals is to support the simplifications of co-funding between Europe and national funding that could be used more easily by SMEs. Then another important point that we're also supporting is that the European and national funding of activities to be able to create collaborative platforms for IoT innovation, where SMEs can profit from those platforms. And then furthermore, we're also stimulating funding mechanisms that need to support of cross-border cooperation and bring together the European players like industrial and academic partners in this area. And then the last topic that we see there is related to more to industrial IoT and how the industrial IoT could be part of the IPCE, that stands for the Important Projects of Common European Interest. And this could be done by integrating the industrial IoT and in the connectivity infrastructure to give access to public authorities and industries like SMEs to do experimentation and testing, and facilities and other kind of facilities that they need in the European member states. So now I would like to give the floor to Jürgen. Jürgen?
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Georgios. I would like to ask you then, just to keep on doing the slideshow. Yeah, thanks a lot. My name is Jürgen Stöhn. I'm with IoT together with Georgios, as he has explained and pointed out in the beginning of the presentation. Well, we think we are really in front of a game-changing environment. Yeah, that's the main term here on this slide, maybe highly decentralized. And this is something which to some extent is unprecedented. So how are we dealing with that? And the topic of this session is work in partnership. So do we need to develop new approaches towards partnerships in a technical environment, a scientific environment, also in a political environment to some extent, which is rapidly and profoundly changing? And so far, interconnection is a key thing. We've been talking about interoperability for a long time. We're talking about interconnection, decentralized systems. So far, this is what we would like to point out: is can we with very well developed patterns, which we have developed in the last couple of years, and all of you are in this conference. I think you are an integral part of this exercise. But how do we need to develop further in this regard of IoT and edge computing? This is a question I would like to put forward. If you could jump to the next slide, maybe. This is, I think, a graphic many, almost all of you, I would assume, know, because this is part of deliberations on industrial IoT and the wider IPCEI, in terms of which strategic value chain, the strategic value chain of industrial IoT, how complex it is at the end of the day. You have a number of verticals, and all of us, we are part of these verticals. We are competing in them. We are developing them. But then you have basis in cybersecurity, which is a cross-cutting exercise. Skills is of not underestimated importance for developing these kind of strategic value chains. A lot of public money can go into industrial IoT. If we don't build up the skills, the knowledge, and also keep this knowledge and build it up in Europe, then I think the funds can be as big as they may be, and there is a certain likelihood that a significant amount of public money will go into the IPCEI and will go into industrial IoT. If we can't provide the skills, if we can't provide the knowledge, then this may be a vain exercise. This is what I would like to point out here. This is cross-cutting. This is important to understand as a holistic concept. Industrial IoT is a holistic concept. It's not new. I think we all know this in theory, and we all position ourselves along these lines. But are we really implementing it when it comes into new patterns of collaboration? That's a question I would like to put forward to this panel, and hopefully we can discuss this more profoundly, not only here, but maybe also as things will develop. If you can jump to the next one, we see opportunities coming up. That's very clear here again. The central point, well, it's almost a contradiction per se, that the central point is decentralization. But this is the name of the game, and that can create opportunities. The decentralization of IoT and edge computing, if you understand it in a correct and an adequate way, that will lead to a lot of market opportunities, research opportunities, and also opportunities for European societies if we do it right, because edge computing is something which is really also based on technological patterns which are available, which are developed in Europe. So this could really be a very, very interesting thing to focus on. We could maybe put it in one sentence that what the last decade was for big data, edge computing, and the new decade is for relevant data. So how do we organize ourselves around that? It's all about value creation. How can we create value? Georgios has mentioned it already in the SME context, and I would definitely like to underpin that. It would be very interesting to include industrial IoT edge into the new IPSE approach. A number of technologies of verticals are being covered by IPSEs. We talk about batteries, we talk about microelectronics. Some of strategic value chains have been identified in the exercise I just had shown you in the last slide. So that would be important to have the right framework. And what I think we cannot underestimate, because this is, of course, that's not only an opportunity, it's almost a citizen's responsibility in our positions is to support the greening of ICT and the greening of IoT. On the one hand, in order to minimize our carbon handprint, our carbon footprint, sorry, but also to go beyond and optimize the carbon handprint, what our technologies can offer for all the projects I have just shown. IoT applications, if they are done and implemented in an adequate way, there we have a key opportunity to reach the goals of the Green Deal, and maybe also enable the Green Deal. That I think is the task what we all have, to bring the Green Deal from paper into reality, and we can play, and we have to play a very crucial role in this community as we go further down the road. That's also part of the game-changing exercise. We speak a lot about the twin transition, the transition to digital and the transition to green. I think personally, digitization is not a value per se, but digitization is an enabler for the green transition. And we always have to see this in a common and in a joint context. And that actually brings me to the last slide, Georgios, if you want to switch it over, please. This is where it's all about. We are on a solid base. We are on a solid base in the different applications we are dealing. So we see SNS, the Smart Networks and Service Partnership, dealing with connectivity. We see EDA dealing with big data, artificial intelligence. We see a vibrant community on high-performance computing. We see the KDT, the Key Digital Technology Partnership, evolving to give an additional impetus to components. And we see the need to bring these stakeholders together in order to enable IoT and edge computing in an implemented way. And I think we are. That's why we were quoting some of the basis of the papers which are out there, and some of them have been presented in the course of this conference already. We don't have a problem of understanding the issue. We don't have a problem of getting our theoretical arms around the issue. I think where we have a challenge is to overcome the silos, build these communities what we need, work on the partnerships. Some steps we are taking already now in the transcontinuity program, or project, where all these verticals which I show here are addressed. And I think that's the challenge which is there, is to organize ourselves, overcome the silos. This is part of the DNA when IoT was founded, was to overcome the silos which have been existing in the IoT community. I think there we have been successful. And I think it's to go one step further and break the silos which are maybe still there to some extent in other communities. And I think in a nutshell, we will only be successful. And that's why I'm very thankful for this session to address work in partnerships. We are only successful if we can come together on not only one, maybe not even necessarily one platform, but to have an institutional dialogue and with all stakeholders involved here from industrial side, also from the political side. So insofar, this would be my plea for this panel to go forward. Let's think the thing jointly over and see where everybody has his or her and her role. And if this could be part of an additional solid basis from IoT, we would be very, very happy. So thanks a lot, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thanks for having us here.
Thank you, Jürgen. Thank you, Georgios. So it looks like AIoTi is already striving to facilitate a number of aspects of edge computing challenges, IoT enabled through cross-domain and cross-vertical approach. And some of the complementary initiatives are already mentioned. There was a question in the chat, actually, from Rolf. Is there a chance to build an European ecosystem for edge computing? Do we have to start with verticals like manufacturing, or on horizontal level across sector? So I don't know if you would like quickly comment on this question.
Yeah, my immediate reply, Rolf, would be we have to do both, because I don't know if you can really separate, and that is where I would also see the challenge maybe. But that's to some extent part of this last slides, as I hope the idea what is behind the slide was, I was able to make this visual and also explain it. Mm-hmm. I think there is an opportunity, a big opportunity for European ecosystem, definitely. We have been discussing this not only in IoT, but I don't tell any secret that this is a discussion which is running very vividly in the German Electronic Manufacturers Association, ZVI, where we have seen, where we are really identifying tremendous opportunities for European edge ecosystems, because edge is also building on a technological basis where Europe is strong. In smart sensing applications, for instance, Europe is a strong region, and we don't have no reasons to hide ourselves there. So insofar, I would firmly underpin that there is a big opportunity for European forward-looking and maybe even taking leadership ecosystem edge computing. I think so. No? That if we take this up, that it's about relevant data to be brought into the cloud. So not every single thing has to go into the cloud, but the relevant data has to go there. And this is where Europe can play very strongly.
Thank you.
Yeah, may I also say something? I think I agree with Jürgen about the fact that we need to focus on both directions. So the horizontal one, and in particular, to topics that already have been discussed, in particular on open platforms and open interfaces and open source as well. So if you want to provide such kind of solutions, I think from the perspective of standardization, looking from the horizontal perspective, it provides a more holistic approach. That's why, we need to also focus from this horizontal dimension, and then from the vertical dimension, of course, each vertical has its own characteristics. So all this need to be taken into account. So both dimensions need to be supported, in my opinion.
If I may, Natalie, quickly comment on
very quickly, because we still have
No, I fully agree, Rolf. IoT is not the only one, but I think we are not the least important one. And this solid base slide, I appreciate you, that you see this from a positive angle. Thanks very much, because I think this is a solid base, but it's just a base. No, this is not yet where we should be. This is where we may be today, and it's indicating where we should go. I think that needs a lot of refinement, but there are these networks are out there where we can do this refinement. No? So I agree with the observation.
Starting point. Thank you so much, Jürgen and Georgios. There are still some additional comments in the chat. I don't think we're doing too bad with time, because I know we have a short presentation from Simon Meyer and from Lindsay Frost still for this session, and then probably we can take a couple more minutes from the closing remarks, but not to cut those short. But before we go into those presentations, since Boris Mauer was not able to contribute before, he made a comment in the chat. So Boris, maybe you can mention it quickly.
Yeah, sure, I can. So effectively, I was commenting on the topic that the Edge will be an app store. That's good, but we need to have an operating system on which the app store sits. And an operating system is closed by definition. If not, it's contribution based. And I think it's effectively three things that need to be clear. That is, how is data owned? And when I'm contributing data, how can I control it? So I need to have a framework, a shared framework on data ownership. I need to have semantic interoperability, and that's harder than in the traditional app store, because we don't have only internet resources, we have physical resources that are added, and we don't have a language for that. At least not a language that developers do understand. So we need to have the semantic framework around it. And the third thing is contracting. So we need to enable smart contracts on top of that. And those three things are frameworks which are, to my understanding, fundamentally horizontal. And I would hope that Europe finds a solution for those three.
Thank you so much for the comment. So if we can go straight to the presentation of Simon Meyer. Simon, Georgios, if you can, stop sharing. Simon, I'm not sure if you have the presentation or you will just share your thoughts.
Oh, that's all right. Hello everyone. Thanks for having me. I was expecting a panel discussion, so I was caught off guard 10 minutes ago. But I think this won't be such a big problem. What I want to do, the problem is I don't have slides to keep my timing in check, right? But I will try to keep it short. I would like to give
don't worry. Huh? I will help with that part. Don't worry.
Perfect. I will give a little bit of a personal perspective on standardization, on the interplay between industry and research in this case, while reporting on the current project that we've started a few months ago and that we're working on together with 13 partners, both from research and from standardization and from industry. So I think a rather interesting project. So my background is web architecture, web of things in particular, and just like Boris was saying right now, and like Martin was saying before, how to enable data to travel with context. Boris was talking about the semantic framework, about tools that we would need, right? And I fully concur with this. Tools that would enable domain experts to formulate domain relationships in a language that would allow machines to understand them. Now we know that the whole semantic web idea, if we do it top down, it didn't go so well. So what we're looking at now is bottom-up semantics, bottom-up semi-semantics even. So bottom-up interoperability on the syntactic layer, we're pretty good there. On the semi-semantic layer, I would call this, I'll talk about this, and on the semantic layer, we'll still have to see, but I fully concur. One of the main problems there is that there is just a gap between people who know stuff and people who can formulate that stuff in a way that machines can understand. Now, I want to briefly talk about the W3C Web of Things. Now, this is of course not a European standardization organization, right? But we're also pretty strong in that context. So what we were doing a few years ago was we were kicking off the standardization of what is today called the Web of Things thing description. I'm posting a link right now. So this is the thing description. And for pushing this standard, companies such as Siemens concretely in this case, were instrumental to drive this. Without this firepower, without this political firepower also, we wouldn't have gotten this done. Right? Just out of a university, we basically don't matter in a business context, maybe a bit in a political context, but Siemens firepower was instrumental to get this off the ground and get this standardized. Of course, there was compromise. There's always compromise when standardizing, right? This is kind of synonymous. But we have this now. And I mean, not everything is in there that I would have liked to have in there, right? But this is how it works. So what we are now doing is we are basing a new European research project, which is called IoT. I'm posting the Cordis link right now. So we are basing this project in part on top of this standardization effort, in part on top of this thing description language. In a very high level, the thing description idea is to enable machines to describe in a machine understandable way what they might be doing and how their interfaces work. Okay, so a kind of an online consumable interface description language. Right? So what we are focusing on in this project is on creating a framework for what we call human-defined autonomy. So it's about autonomous devices in the end, and autonomy requires interoperability, as we know, right? I don't want to call the human for every single local operational decision, but the human should not be out of the loop. So the human should be supporting processes when the human's creativity, the human's input is needed. Right? Mostly on the creative side. If I think about manufacturing processes, a robot can grab lots of different artifacts, but when there's one artifact that's maybe made out of glass, maybe the robot knows that, right? Or not knows, but maybe the robot understands that this is delicate and better ask a human to get over this problem. And in this project, we are concentrating on use cases across industrial applications, the famous lot size one, of course, of flexible industrial processes, agricultural, semi-autonomous agricultural approaches, and also healthcare approaches. So semi-autonomous monitoring of patients, for instance. And as I was saying, this of course requires interoperability. And from a technology perspective, we create this interoperability on the syntactic and semi-semantic level through learnings that we have from the web, right? For instance, the usage of hypermedia to drive application state, which is part of the original web architecture, is being revived at the moment, because we noticed that if we take the human out of the loop of these operational decisions, then we need to have a way of how the server, of how a web server in this case, can guide clients in their local decision making. So this is complementing a client's global planning, like I want to build that car, right? This is complementing this with local decision support about what local actions are possible now. And this is of course tightly coupled to interface descriptions. This is where the thing description comes in. And then so this, and I think that this directly talks to Martin and also to Boris's second issue that he raised. And so I wanted to emphasize the role of hypermedia in this context. We were creating this web a few, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I'm very sorry, to bring people together, right? To bring people together and bring data, information in heterogeneous formats together. So we are trying to use this again to bring together different types of autonomy. I know that I shouldn't use the term in this way, but that we are bringing together different types of autonomies and different types of intelligences, including natural and artificial intelligence, of course. So what we are putting forward there is something that we've started to call hypermedia multi-agent systems. Now this is a current research project. The idea would be to create proactive components using this modern word, right, in a microservice architecture, proactive components that can, without human intervention, talk to one another and agree. I'm looking at Boris's third point, right, the contracting, and agree about what they should be doing together instead of relying on a person to do this. A year ago, we've created a little video about this idea. I'm posting the link over here. I won't screen it for time reasons. This is very popular science, right? This was made for the public, and I want to close by saying this is highly interesting. I think this idea of technological interoperability and technological openness is highly interesting for processes such as in industries, bringing together different manufacturing machines. But it doesn't stop there. The same idea, or very similar ideas of creating frameworks that support the interoperability of different types of intelligences, natural ones, people, and machine intelligence included, can be used for very different applications as well, such as the management of online disinformation. So this doesn't look very similar to a manufacturing process, but in the end, we are arguing that also there we need a collaboration where things do, or machines do, what they are good at, scaling up, syntactically checking lots of pieces of information, and people do what people are good at, scaling down, going deeper, looking into the semantics of information, and then have a framework that brings these types of intelligences together to do better work together. And I'm of course also pushing a link about this. This was my input. Thanks for having me, and I'm happy to ask any questions that are coming up.
Thank you so much, Simon. You didn't have the visuals on screen, but at least a number of those are now, I think, imprinted in our minds. The hypermedia, multi-agent proactive component, the robotic arm, grabbing glass and beyond.
The openness, right? The openness that we're designing a system where I'm not assigned a single function, but where I'm assigned a role, and I can fulfill different functions together in a social sense.
It's within different collaborative environments. So it looks like, you know, it might be easier to solve, you know, in the absence of other agents if we're dealing only on that level. But the governance, of course, is going to be the key here as well, other than the technological challenges. Thank you so much, Simon. Thanks for sharing the links. Those are going to be in the proceeds. So stay with us. I would like to give the floor to the last presentation of this panel slash discussion. I would like to give the floor to Lindsay Frost, who is representing Etsy. Lindsay, you are free to share your screen.
Good. First question, can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
Good.
And we can see you.
Good.
Not the presentation yet, but at least these two parts are check.
Good. So start screen share. Sharing. Now going to.
Yes, it's on screen and in full mode. Thank you so much.
Good. Thank you very much. So I was asked to talk, especially from the point of view of Etsy as an organization and how, let's say, corporations and SMEs can address IoT at the edge with the help and together with Etsy. So let me go forward with a short introduction to myself. That is, I have two bodies somehow. I think it works that way. On the one side, I am supported by NEC, a company with position of standards and particularly also activity recently in standards ICT group. And on the other side in Etsy, I'm a board member, recently re-elected. I'm a chairman of a particular group I want to address today, and CIM. And recently also started a chair and a group for AI in Etsy, where the data which we're all talking about is, let me say, going to be used in AI systems. So moving forward, I'd like to just note that when I talk about NEC or NEC Labs later in this talk, I'm talking about the small research center we have in Heidelberg in Germany. And I began there 20 years ago. We were talking about 5G. We were talking about IP networks. Nowadays, we're talking 80% of the time about AI, about getting and using data with semantic interop, and especially on health issues and others, which people have mentioned. The interop is the key. Now, talking about introduction to Etsy, the standards people. We have a huge organization in Europe, one of the 3 ESOs. And of course, there is a big membership of over 900 companies, and about 25% of them are SMEs. So lots of standards, and part of the job of ETSI staff is to help members and stakeholders everywhere get hold of the appropriate standards. So talking about standards in ETSI for IoT and the edge, the ICT standards areas are many various e-health, 3G, 5G, emergency communication, safety issues. Of course, there's partnerships with 3GPP and 1M2M, which people will know. And additionally, there are a number of activities which are very relevant, MEC, etc., to edge computing. So let me just cover the stack, as it were. In ETSI, we don't do chipsets, but we look at how the devices interact with the local network, with gateways, getting the data to be labeled with the right, with the appropriate context at the semantic level, connecting it all, managing the distribution of the data through the network, and then to a certain extent with services, human factor issues, e-health topics, artificial augmented reality style of activities, and so on. So we have, as well as specs, we have specifications, we have some KPI work and some guidelines. This is just a very high-level overview. And I'll talk in a few minutes about a particular group for context information management, which sits somewhere in the middle. So here's a link page for you later to know what all those acronyms mean. Now, dealing with data, we have a very complex system, as you're all aware. And in this particular group, ISG SIM, where I'll mention more detail in a moment, we try to adapt and adopt a lot of topics which have been brought out or brought into the world by W3C and others. In particular, we look at everything as an entity, every concept, every person, every building, and we try to let people label such information with all the attributes that that entity needs, like location or speed or ownership or whatever. And especially nowadays, everyone is aware that relationships are as important as properties, and we include in the work of ISG SIM a way to manage or annotate these relationships. So the goal is to have reliability of transfer of the context and the semantics from the very edge, from the devices through to the services, with recognition of the privacy and licensing issues, and to keep flexible. So what we did, if the clicking works, is we tried to create a low overhead layer on top of IoT or other apps or legacy databases, and moving up in the direction of reasoning based on the data. So what we've got is kind of a framework or a layer here, which is bringing up information from 1M to M or from other IoT systems or from agents on mobile handsets into whatever service layer is needed. And we're doing it with some W3C standards. For example, JSON LD is a particular protocol which we're using. And the point is, we try to keep our messaging very simple. This is just to give you an idea for those who know it. In JSON LD, you can refer to something and its context, so you can define somewhere else what do you mean by a shelf in a shop, or what do you mean by the capacity of the shelf, and you can later go out and get that information back again or query the whole system. So what we're trying in ETSI is to make it simple to label data, reference its context, and move that information up and around. So what my supporting company, NEC, has done is to try to build on those standards and make a next step. So what I'm talking about for the next 3 slides or 4 slides is in particular development on top of those ISG SIM standards from ETSI. And we have approach where we're trying to scale the huge data, keep the very good latency, and enable the processing of all of that information. So in this project, which was supported by research funds from the European Commission, we have developed a way to move the handling of the context from up in the cloud down to close to the edge, so mobile edge, and we have done it in a way which can be orchestrated so that there is, depending on your application, different latency, different bandwidth. So this is the definition of the project, fog flow, and we are looking at orchestrating where the processing happens, either right down near the producers or right at the top at the application level. And it's done using the so-called IoT broker, which is part of the ISG SIM definition of the standard. This processing part can be moved around as needed, doing more of it at the cloud layer or more of it at the edge, depending on circumstances. So at the moment, it's not quite so far. The schedule was to have NGIoT, the protocol defined by ETSI ISG SIM, implemented fully by the end of this year. So they have a few weeks yet, but it's working quite well to optimize the whole process depending on the use case. So for more information on that project, you can go to a tutorial. You can grab the code, which is being updated, as I said. You can look at other presentations, go to previous papers which were, let me say, well received. And of course, here's a good place to acknowledge this work and a lot of other work being done on context information and semantic interoperability is being supported by the European Union via various Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe funding. And this particular project, Fed for IoT, is also supported by a Japanese organization. So that's the acknowledgements from the people in NEC labs in Heidelberg and the particular group who do IoT and AI. So now I'd like to say, how did ETSI help us in this journey as members and as stakeholders? And how can ETSI help you or other organizations to get more use out of the standards which are being developed? So first of all, ETSI has a certain amount of teaching and learning material for people who are not as experienced as the people on this call, many of whom I recognize. So you can move to this page to access a lot of background information. And of course, there's a huge book about standardization in various topic areas. ETSI also has, as was mentioned on the chat, plug tests to help implementations be checked against each other to see how well they are implementing particular standards. And I should mention, just as we speak, in the ISG SIM group, we are working on a whole suite of tests which will help to check the protocol activity, which I emphasize for moving information and context information around. So I'm looking forward to plug tests next year. And this, of course, applies, as people said, to NEC and other topics which were mentioned. And finally, very importantly, the IPR policy. So there's open source, but please pay for proprietary patents. There's open specifications. There's specifications you have to please pay for from ISO or IEC, and so on. I just want to emphasize in ETSI, we have a database which helps to locate which patents may be related to particular standards. So you can, as a company or a user, you can go there first and see what you're getting into. And we have especially the FRAND terms, and more we are also working towards showing how standards can be implemented using open source, as you saw from my example. So that is officially the end of my very fast run through, but I think I left at least 6 minutes that I could use to emphasize particular points. So I will go back to a couple of places where I noted that the people on this call are, let me say, highly involved in the area. So I would like to just give a short additional explanation of how this standard from ISG SIM is actually operating. So what we're doing is we're asking information systems or extracting from 1M to M short information about the data, about what I mentioned before, the properties and the relationships that connecting that data. And we are managing a federated system of information repositories to help move that data where it's needed. And that moving of data is done via various simple HTTP messages with protocol body based on JSON-LD. And people who know that kind of area of the world, JSON-LD is not ideal for handling linked data and RDF style of database systems, but it can be done. And we proposed a certain formatting which makes it also relatively easy for users and especially programmers to enable it. So we are trying to help move the information around while keeping hold of where it came from, who owns it, and a particular item we are working on hard is the security, so that we can get the originator of the information to sign the data saying it was actually created at their gateway or device, and from at that point onward you can check, is it valid data, is it really not spoofing or otherwise manipulated. So that, I think, is very important for some of the points people made about governance. And well, fake news is very high level, but fake data is one of the issues which is very worrying for future AI systems, that they may be training and then reacting to information which is not only inaccurate perhaps, but also deliberately misrepresented. So you cannot fix easily bad data. Once it's in the system, you can delete it, but it's hard to fix it. So the point is, get it right, get it labeled, get it signed, and get it posted into places where you can use it. Okay, I think that's enough time. I hope we have a good chance for discussions. And ETSI has excellent collaborations with AIoTI and some also with W3C. And we think we all need to talk more in order to handle this very complex system. So whatever you do, don't think that your one small or big STO can handle everything. We're all in it together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. More challenges, more visual images. What will stay with me is the fake data next to the AI image, that's for sure. And thanks for your encouraging words as to we're in it together. So I think, thank you so much, Lindsay. So I think that concludes the round of the presentations. So we're a little bit 5 minutes over time. And my question is, I think there are lots of discussions in the chat, which is very encouraging. But I would like to give the floor to Gael, because I think we also intended it to be part of the discussion. So if the organizers don't mind, if we can take 5 minutes for the round of the comments from the presenters, and if I can start with Gael.
Yeah, well, I think that was very interesting to see the different organizations. In terms of having organizations working together, I think that we all have our own DNA with So ETSI, of course, is this big standardization body. We are very involved in open source. AIoTI is more on the coordination of the ecosystem. And I think that there is easily a complementarity of all the organizations we see today. I had one specific question to Lindsay, because at the end of your presentation you mentioned something like there is open source. This is my code in open source. Please pay for my patents or something like that. Is it what you said, or?
I just put into the chat, there are many definitions of open source, and
No.
People need to be, well, there are, people need to be aware that in some cases, you really get full use of the code, do with it what you like, including commercial applications. And in other cases, there are existing IPR that if you use the IPR, then you need to basically get the permission of the owner. So I cannot go out, write open source and reuse IPR from somebody else without their permission. So the code is like a copyrighted document. Yeah. So all I wanted to say,
well,
for sure,
maybe
we try to
would
be transparent in ETSI about what you see and what you get.
Yes, and if you permit, I would like to address specifically this point, because that's the whole point of working with open source foundations. And I think that I mentioned 3 foundations at the beginning of this morning. So if you take code from the Apache Software Foundation or from the Eclipse Foundation, then you can be certain that everything has been done so that this code, you can use this code safely for your products. And that makes a difference. And yeah, maybe if you go to GitHub and you just download an interesting project with no specific IP due diligence, and you may be in trouble. But I would like that what we promote, and specifically at the Eclipse Foundation, is what we call business-friendly open source. So mostly permissive licenses and weak copyleft licenses, if that's a bit technical. But they all have a clause about patents that make it free to use in the context of this code. So I think that's not fair to infer that using open source is putting your business at risk of patent infringement. There's a whole.
Yeah. Please, but can we please avoid the open source debate, because there have been 77 committee meetings about it in ETSI, and I would rather not try to repeat that here.
Okay, no problem. That's it.
Yes,
well, I just had to say something about it. One thing so is I think that maybe I would like to share just this a second. I think that I wanted to show you this slide that is certainly not new for everybody, but we think at Eclipse that open source can be a real research catalyst, and that it enables potentially to, and you can write something similar for open standards, in my opinion, with the exception that with open source you have a real implementation, and that it's something that really help drive adoption. So we had lots of discussion this morning about what can we do, and I think that when we say that where is the European TensorFlow, or then I think that it's in our hands when we participate in research projects, for example, etc., to do proper open source and not to just push code on GitHub to have the right box checked for the review. That's not easy. That's an activity by itself, and I think that's one of the important mind shift to put together. And also this is just what I was addressing with Lindsay, that open source foundations are not profit, and that's particularly true for the Eclipse Foundation. We are a non-profit organization. Our mission is to enable sustainable, vendor-neutral, open collaboration. So that's here you can publish very good, very interesting code on GitHub, and you can find very interesting code on GitHub. You can also have very, very good stuff that belongs to only one company. And we are talking about, but you have, if you have code in an open source foundation, then you have vendor neutral governance most of the time. So that's really what matters: vendor neutral governance and business friendly intellectual property management and proper intellectual property management. So in the chat we were talking about Kubernetes, and I think that Kubernetes as being hosted at the CNCF is in this category, that you have a proper governance. But for example, if you are using Kubernetes, but you also want to use Istio, then Google made it clear recently that Istio would stay something that is not under the CNCF, because they didn't want to. So you are more in this single vendor open source aspect. And yeah, open source is global, but Europe must have a say in it, and so it's the idea is to use it not only to join islands, but to also show leadership, in my opinion. And this that's really I think that everything is there. That really depends on us and on how we put the different bricks together. And yeah, well, so being really focused on creating open source platforms and commercializing those open source platforms, or let's say building products on top of those open source platforms. I think that that's what we can hope, and that's what we can try to do together in this crowd.
Thank you, Gael. This was, I think, part of the closing remark.
Yes, definitely.
You're one of the presenters for the next one. So without any further delay, I would like to conclude our session and give floor to the Commission and to the NGIoT for the closing remarks. Martin, can we start with you?
Perhaps you want to go first, Rolf?
Please.
I don't mind. Okay, I may start. Yes. So first of all, thanks to the presenters of today. I think it was we had very stimulating discussions. We had different views. I think in difference from what we had yesterday. I think we got confirmation that IoT and Edge is a perfect match. So there were strong voices to build on IoT foundations and to move to the edge. Different from yesterday, I think we had a clear articulation that there's a need for a data strategy, data governance strategy. We expanded particularly also on the semantic framework, which is linked to urban standards. We heard it from Etsy, we heard it from W3C. So the edge business model will not fly with a clear and solid data strategy. I presented the different taxonomy of the edge, and we got good examples, particularly from the industrial domain, from Susanne, from the mobile edge, from OT. We heard yesterday the main building blocks on the sensing and control devices. Yeah, we have to see, what sort of other players, how cloud players, particularly the hyperscalers, but also business intelligence systems like SAP, will like to play a role in that different schemes, topologies of edge. Was also quite clear today, if we talk about how to avoid islands, I think there was unisono sort of consensus about that we need to build that on value networks and open ecosystems. I think it was clearly mentioned also from Gail and the Eclipse Foundation that therefore that we need open standards, eventually open source, open specifications in order also to enable SMEs to participate, like mentioned by the Alliance IoTI. So, but said this, taking the example of automotive, we are far away from consensus on a framework like AUTOSAR, an open specification. I think, we are in the beginning of a journey. I think it was also quite often mentioned that at the moment we leverage on progress and capacity of hyperscalers or Microsoft or AWS. And we have to see, we still have to find a European voice, a European drive in order to compete on a global level, though that's basically my conclusion. Said this, the CSA NGIoT tries to put that all together, into a roadmap. We have to still have to evaluate, to what extent we need sector-specific driving of the innovation, or whether we need a horizontal coordination. What sort of industries are the forerunners in Europe to sort of collaborate on sort of a joint research agenda? We have to define somehow the timeline, and in particular also to see which of the industry is open for an approach, an open framework, and open standards. So basically, particular thanks to Eclipse for co-organizing the event today. Particular thanks to the Alliance of IoTI. Thanks for the CSA of NGIoT. And Martin, I give you the last word. Before doing that, thanks again for all the discussion today, the presentations. Wish you had the chance to celebrate with your family on Christmas days and pass safely and healthy in the new year. And thanks again, and we stay tuned. Thank you.
Thanks, Rolf. Natalie, can I share the screen?
Yes.
So yeah, it's been, as you say, Rolf, very stimulating, and thanks, Natalie, for taking us safely through the day. I want to just share a few reflections. As we can see, there are many ways to pick this up. I give you a short backdrop for my thinking. You see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so,
yes,
tomorrow in Denmark, my home country, we launch the guide to sustainable digital transformation in Denmark from Danish standards and all the industry and public sector and civil society together, municipalities and so. And I think basically what we're seeing on the screen is what we're all discussing. So we have technologies and want to reach some goals, and then we have this market, which is demand and supply with some regulation around. And then, well, what are the recommendations perhaps coming out of the conversations yesterday and today? But clearly, there are two things. So there's the technology side and there's a governance side. And I think what we have learned, not just these 2 days, but in general, is that we must keep these together. They're not the same, but we must not break those conversations, because the technology must be able to support the kind of governance we want. And on the other hand, governance cannot be just wishful thinking. It must be grounded in reality. So of course, it's back to the sovereignty and the value networks and so on. But just to say, in a picture, I think this is what we are all trying to do with technologies at the moment. And what the guide we will present tomorrow, I think the most interesting point here is that the first recommendation is focus on data, both from a governance perspective, management perspective, as well as a technology perspective. I think this is what we have learned today. And of course, presenting this to management and politicians in technical domains together, it's interesting that the biggest issue are actually at points 6 and 7 here. So to be conscious about the maturity and complexity, not just of the organizations that are involved, but also technologies, and actually do things that work in harmony. So my reflections here is indeed that we cannot have this stateless data just moving around. This is not our society today. Data travels with the context, so we need the minimal interoperability that supports this travel, of course, with restrictions. So we have static characteristics and dynamic capabilities, and these dynamic capabilities, they often happen increasingly at limited conditions on the edge, and that's what we're addressing. So how can data travel around, including on the edge with this? The point is, we cannot solve this by looking at a centralized situation. So we cannot solve the edge by looking at the cloud. We cannot just migrate the cloud to the edge. It's different conditions, also for political reasons. And then I just want to emphasize, many of you know, but I have another hat. I'm chair of a lot of demand side organizations, lots of municipalities in Europe. And actually, if you put together, it was very interesting to see the Artemis slide yesterday about the potential markets. Smart cities and communities is a larger market potential, more than 3 trillion, if you put together, the smart homes, because you know what they are where people live. So if you put that together, that's a larger market opportunity than just manufacturing, which is otherwise the second biggest. I think that's something to reflect on, that if in fact the challenges here are, how do we get these complexities and systems together? Well, let's not start from the production line and think that we can spread that to society. Let's start from reality. And then finally, I mean, public sector is not just massive buying arm, it's also a catalyst and regulator. And it is in fact closer to citizens, also thinking businesses as citizens in Europe. So thank you for being with us. I'm very happy to have recorded and captured also this conversation. We will, from NGIoT with the team, many of them have been here around, do our best also to continue mobilizing and facilitating the conversation among players, among networks. So thanks again, Rolf, for giving us the opportunity to help out here, and certainly also Gail and the Eclipse Foundation. I think it's very invigorating to have this conversation on the ecosystem level. Thanks for supporting us here today. And of course, the Alliance for IoT Innovation, Natalie, not just for moderating, but also for the continued collaboration that we have. We continue in the new year, even before. So see you soon in upcoming events in the next 6 months. We will very much focus on making good use of the upcoming work programs, but certainly also being not just looking at projects, but actually what are the market dynamics that we can bring together. Thank you, everyone, and I leave it at that, and I give you back the floor, Natalie, to close the session.
Thank you so much. Wow, I didn't know that, the scope could be condensed in yet another impactful visual image, Martin. So that's why my reaction was as that. So you've shared yet another image that we will carry with us, where you put together the technology and the governance together. Just one maybe closing thought on this is we have the societal challenges in front of us, and we all recognize that we need to deliver a number of policies and the Green Deal specifically, and migrate from what to how. And so let's keep this overall and overarching context as the background to what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve, and do it with this wonderful ecosystem that I think is already facilitated. And one comment that was shared in the chat is that hopefully these discussions will bring the EU scale strategies that we can all carry forward. So on that positive note, the work continues. Thank you so much to all the speakers, contributors, and the discussion in the chat. And I think the organization will follow up as promised with the next step. Thank you so much for the organizers. It was a pleasure to moderate the session today. Thank you.